I summon Infinitrack Anchor Drill from my hand, a level 4 Earth Machine-type monster.
So it's exactly like trains?
Next, I'll special summon Infinitrack Harvester from my hand, adding an Infinitrack Trencher to my hand with its effect.
So it's exactly like trains?
I'll summon Infinitrack Trencher from my hand, then use Anchor Drill's effect to make them both level 9.
So it's exactly like trains?
Finally, I'll summon Infinitrack Earth Slicer, a level 9 Xyz with no quick effect.
So it's exactly like trains?
And with that, I'll pass my turn.
Oh, so it's exactly like trains.
Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, back again with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. Well, we got weird with witchcraft, we stared into the evil eye, and now it's time to make peace with infinity. Infinitracks are the third and final deck archetype from Infinity Chasers, and let's just say there's a reason it took me a couple of weeks to put this one together. Let's head into Deck Edit and see if we can get this train wreck of trains on track. So here's the list, and woof. Alright, the weakness of this strategy should be immediately obvious. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. So firstly, for those of you that don't know, Infinitrack is a series of large machine monsters, usually on tracks, who can manipulate their own levels in order to overlay into a series of wildly inefficient Xyz monsters with a lot of attack points. God, I just love how creative Konami can be. Anyway, the downside of this archetype is that none of their plays are particularly consistent, powerful, or interesting. Their power play involves summoning their level 4, which can summon another Infinitrack from your hand, then manipulating both of their levels to 9, then summoning either their tribal rank 9, who can pop several cards a turn, or VFD, the most notoriously boring payoff in the universe. If you can't access that play, you're kind of out of luck. You'll either have to be satisfied with a rank 7 with such amazing effects as gain 1,000 attack, or passing on a board of a normal summoned 0 attack monster. To make matters worse, the deck has a crippling reliance on Anchor Drill, without whom they have literally no way to get their other monsters on the board. Their normal summons are too numerous, and their special summons are too inefficient. In short, they're an infinitely less powerful trains, and playing this deck is usually a track to X3 station. Or is it? Now, some of you have likely been playing this game since 2015. Firstly, to you, I apologize. And secondly, those among you with that experience might remember a little tool that would often show up in normal summon-reliant archetypes. I'm speaking about our newly limited friend, Brilliant Fusion. While it's true we're unlikely to sack into it as often as we used to, the addition of the Predaplant search engine has made it much more consistent despite its less repeatable status. The Predaplants, with Seraphinite and Trick Clown, can also helpfully make Saruya, who can sculpt brick hands into hands where Anchor Drill can actually trigger, and can special summon any of our playstarters in the occasion that we can't get them going before Seraphinite summoning. We're also playing a backup normal summon engine of Symphonic Warriors, which helpfully summon a level 5 machine, turning hands with Anchor and nothing else into VFD at the very least. In a pinch, we can even pivot to lines of Reproducus, Summon Sorceress, and Thrasher for near infinite extension, far past the tracks of interaction. In a perfect world, we can make the tribal rank 9 going second, and some combination of untargetable CDI and VFD going first. So with that, let's get into the card by card. Firstly, our Infinitracks. We're playing 3 Harvester, the Stratos, 3 Anchor Drill, the Goblinberg, and 3 Trencher, the Extender. We're also playing 1 Crab Crane, what the hell, OCG? Because it's searchable. Finally, we're on 3 Runaway Railcar Flying Pegasus, an honorary Infinitrack. After that are our Brilliant Fusers, 3 Lone Fire Blossom, 3 Orpheus Scorpio, 1 Darlingtonia Cobra, whose hidden passive causes it to always show up in my opener, 1 Trick Clown, and 1 Garnet. After that is Symphonics, 3 Guitar, and 1 Microphone. Finally, we're on 3 Ghost Ogre as a secondary light target for Seraphinite, as 3 Garnets is where I draw the line. After that are our spells, 3 Urgent Schedule for going second, 3 Instant Fusion as a secondary Cobra target, a rank 5 enabler, and a VFD setup tool with Anchor Drill, 3 Machine Duplication for Trencher or Harvester, 1 Brilliant Fusion, and 1 Outrigger Expand, which can rank an Infinitrack boss into 1 2 stars higher and prevents targeting of machine Xyz. Don't worry, it's searchable. In the extra deck, space is tight. We're on Seraphinite, obviously. Psychroid, it's the only Earth machine level 5. Thousand Eyes, VFD, Earth Slicer, Mountain Smasher, and Skeptical Gamer. Just kidding, the last one's called River Stormer, which is somehow more dorky. After that is CDI, Saruya, Summon Sork, Reproducus, Goliath, Landphalinkus for scenarios where we need an EMZ, and Nightmare Phoenix. So with that, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against Abyss Actor, and we've drawn a Garnet, though you can see we also have access to a double summon regardless. Let's see just how far a machine duplication can take us. We're going to start by setting Guitar and activating its effect, discarding one Garnet for another, getting a Mike's to our side of the board, then Tribute summoning Trencher. You gotta do what you gotta do. We'll activate Machine Duplication, then overlay into River Storm. We'll add a copy of Harvest to hand, normal summon Harvest, add a copy of Crab Crane to hand, go into Goliath, use Crab Crane's effect to special summon itself and get an Outrigger Expand from deck. We'll then go into a Cyber Dragon Nova and an Infinity before using River Storm's Grave effect to special summon itself, then rank up into a Mountain Smasher. This sets up an Earth Slicer for next turn and an OTK. Our opponent's going to activate extras, and once they are locked into Abyss Actors, we'll go ahead and negate it. Afterwards, they're going to set a Mellow Madonna and use its effect, taking 1,000 in order to get a scale. They'll set scales, Pendulum Summon, but they're not able to out our board, and knowing the OTK is coming, they'll concede. As you may have guessed, this deck's best matchups are against decks that have a troubling time beating big chunguses. And will you look at that, our second match is up against Trickstar. Now, of course, larger and larger men is not as big of a problem for Trickstar as it has been in the past. They do have access to Carabine in this day and age, but it's still no walk in the park. We're going first. We're going to start by normal summoning a copy of Orpheus Scorpio to get a copy of Darling Tonia Cobra from our deck. We'll then add a copy of Brilliant Fusion to our hand. Our opponent will respond with a Droll Lockbird. That's upsetting, but we should still be able to pop off. We'll go into Seraphinite and Trick Clown. Our opponent has a DD Crow for our Trick Clown. We are now squarely on the backup plan. We'll use Reproducus to make a Summon Sorceress, then activate Instant Fusion to get a copy of Parapsychroid from our extra deck, and a copy of Trencher from our deck. We'll go into Nova, and then Infinity, attaching this copy of Darling Tonia Cobra, and passing it back to our opponent. They have no answer to Infinity until they rip Mind Control off the top. That means we're going to have to burn this copy of CDI on Mind Control. They'll normal summon a copy of Candina, use this copy of Light Stage to get Carabine, then activate said Carabine, destroying our CDI. It's still not the end of the world until they activate Monster Reborn on CDI, targeting our copy of Summon Sorceress, forcing us to use Urgent Schedule while there's no material on CDI. We take a little bit of damage for doing so, they attach the Summon Sorceress, and we draw for turn. Well, Machine Duplication is pretty good. We're going to use Trencher's effect to bring back Harvester. We'll activate Harvester, they will CDI in response, and that clears the way for Machine Duplication. We'll get a copy of Trencher from deck. Unfortunately, we only have one remaining. We'll take a little bit of damage and go into River Storm, getting a copy of Flying Pegasus. We haven't used our normal, so we'll do that now, and unfortunately, we don't really have a lot in the extra deck to deal with this, so we're going to have to be satisfied with crashing. Still, pretty good. Our opponent for turn draws Lilybell, which is usually bricky, but in this specific instance is pretty good because it adds Carabine back. That's upsetting. We draw for turn, and what do we find but a Lonefire Blossom? Well, they are kind enough to reincarnation that into a Crab Crane. We'll go into a copy of Rock Anchor, special summoning this copy of Crab Crane and going into an Earthshaker, destroying our opponent's entire board. Now, we don't have to deal with Carabine. We'll use Harvester's effect to get a Rock Anchor to hand, activate its second effect, and then activate the effect to add Outrigger Expand to deck before going into an Earthshaker. Unfortunately, our opponent still does have a copy of Reincarnation in Graveyard, and we do kind of have to eat the Carabine here if we want any hope of winning. As long as they don't draw exactly Licorice, we should be fine, but there it is. That allows them to extend even further using Light Stage's effect to get a second copy of Licorice and eating our copy of Landphalinkus. We draw for turn, and what do we find but a guitar? I mean, our entire deck is basically bricks at this point. Our graveyard is where the action is happening anyway. We're going to normal summon a copy of Rock Anchor, use Trencher's effect to bring back Crab Crane, use Rock Anchor's effect to go into VFD, and we'll attack over our opponent's entire board. We'll attach this copy of Licorice to this Earthshaker, and then use Earthshaker's effect to destroy the Light Stage before passing it back. We use TK in draw phase, calling Light. Unfortunately, our opponent draws a Terraforming, which means they're able to get a Light Stage, normal summon a copy of Candina, and pass it back. I don't want to use VFD on my turn because they can chain Licorice, so we'll just attack, eat the Licorice, and then attack directly with VFD. All we have to survive is one additional turn. We activate VFD and draw, calling Light, and they drew Super Polymerization. They'll go into a Mud Dragon of the Swamp and pass it back to us. Our entire deck is just Garnets at this point. A Lonefire Blossom will only get us a copy of Orpheus Scorpio in defense, and we'll have to pray that they don't draw a play starter. Of course, they draw Candina, so they'll normal summon the Candina, get a copy of Trickstar Reincarnation, and attack directly for 2,000 points of damage. Well, that was an upsetting game, but it wasn't a bad one by any stretch of the imagination. I'm confident we can beat our best of 3 versus meta, which is against Salamangreat. Our opener in game 1 is... You know what? Let's just go to game 2. Okay, so we're in game 1.5. We've opened much better this time. We have a copy of Lonefire Blossom. We've drawn Trick Clown, but of course we can always discard him for Orpheus Scorpio's effect. Our opponent's hand, inversely, is middling, to say the least. Unless they find something relevant off of this Pot of Desires, they may have lost already. We'll start by normal summoning this copy of Lonefire Blossom, then activating its effect 3 times in order to get a copy of Orpheus Scorpio from our deck. We'll activate the effect of Orpheus Scorpio, trying to get a Darlingtonia Cobra that prompts the Effectivator from our opponent. We'll get our Trick Clown from graveyard and then pass it back. For turn, our opponent draws Roar, which is decent. They'll activate Pot of Desires, and what do they find but Foxy Circle? Alright, looks like we are going to have to play Yu-Gi-Oh! They'll go ahead and activate Circle, getting a copy of Foul to their hand before going into a Valynx, and activating the effect of Gazelle. Gazelle's effect will trigger after they get a copy of Sanctuary to their hand. They'll then special summon this copy of Foul, send a copy of Spinny, use Spinny's effect, go into Mirage Stalio, use Mirage Stalio to get a Jack Jaguar, and go into Sunlight Wolf. This triggers Mirage Stalio's effect, putting the Trick Clown back in our hand. We'll activate Salamangreat Will in order to get Spinny and Gazelle back before going to Update Jammer and Borreload Dragon. This is extremely frightening. We don't have a lot that deals with it, but we do have some things. We draw an Urgent Schedule, which is the #1 card that triggers Roar in the world. We'll now normal summon a copy of Harvestor in order to get a copy of Crab Crane. We'll go into 2 additional Harvesters before activating Crab Crane's effect and getting an Outrigger Expand from our deck. This is extremely important because it means if we can make a monster with 3,000 attack, it can't be targeted by Borreload. Our opponent will DD Crow our Trencher activation, which means we go into Goliath, use Riverstorm's effect to bring itself back, and then use Outrigger Expand to make it a Colossal Mountain. We'll make it 3,100 attack and attack over Borreload for 100 damage. So things are looking pretty good until our opponent activates Salamangreat Foxy and finds, Circle Rage. Well, that's upsetting. Getting Rage means that they have a plan already. They'll activate Fusion of Fire to go into Violet Chimera, and oh my god, wait, this thing's attack is different than its normal attack. Wait. Alright, a frustrating interaction to say the least. Thankfully, our opponent is humoring us and allowing us to play a game 3. We've opened as good as we possibly can. It doesn't get better than this. They have no hand traps. Please, can we just win one? We're going to start by activating the effect of Lonefire Blossom 3 times to get a copy of Orpheus Scorpio from our deck. We'll then activate the effect of Orpheus Scorpio to get a Darlingtonia Cobra from our deck as well, and a Brilliant Fusion from our deck to our hand. We'll activate Brilliant Fusion to get a copy of Seraphonite to our side of the board, and a copy of Trick Clown on our side of the field. We'll then go into Saruya, and we find more extenders, basically. We'll activate Instant Fusion for a copy of Parapsychroid, special summon a copy of Rock Anchor, use its effect on the Parapsychroid so they both become 9, and then go into VFD. We'll activate VFD in draw phase, calling Fire, and things are looking pretty good. Our opponent's going to Pot of Desires, and they find themselves a copy of Effectivator. They'll go into Valynx a couple of times, and then activate Fusion of Fire. That gets rid of our Saruya, and nets them a copy of Violet Chimera. Now, we do have a response. We can get a copy of Warrior Mike and eat this copy of Valynx. Afterwards, we'll Instant Fusion to make a Thousand Eyes Restrict, and eat the Violet Chimera, but they have an Effectivator. And now, an unstoppable force has met an immovable object. Because VFD has an attack stat that's different than its normal attack stat, it can be beaten over by this Violet Chimera. But if our opponent attacks, we can activate VFD in order to prevent its death. Unfortunately, it means we can't proactively activate VFD, and they get to pop off as much as they want. They haven't done so yet, which is good, but unfortunately we don't have any way to further extend unless we draw into it. They're going to go into a Sunlight Wolf, finally ridding us of the menace that is Violet Chimera. We're free to activate VFD, but by this point, they have the Roar set. The game is looking pretty grim. They're going to reset Roar and attack directly for 1,000, 1,800, and 1,800. So we're back with the deck, and why do I torture myself? Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. One, Earth Slicer is pretty good. You know, it pops a bunch of cards, provided that you're going second and can somehow assemble an OTK and complete your plays uninterrupted. Two, it's a decent house for other actually good cards without a home. Machine Duplication, Brilliant Fusion, the Symphonic Warriors, Urgent Schedule. I mean, I can respect camaraderie in deck space, I suppose. And 3, Anchor Drill was a short print, so something good wasn't. And the cons. 1. Oh boy. I guess the biggest issue is the lack of playables. Trencher is good, Harvester is good, Anchor Drill is good, but nothing else is. What's more, none of these cards are redundant. It's not like Trickstar, where like Candina and Lightstage effectively do the same thing. Their cards are all good for different reasons. That makes the deck extremely draw dependent and bricky. 2, even their best boards don't cut it in 2019. No one's impressed by VFD or CDI anymore. Decks are chewy. They don't have choke points. They overwhelm with advantage instead of folding to one negate. And 3, they're uninspired. They literally do the same thing as trains. They're the same typing as trains, and they're worse. Why would Konami make a new archetype that does something exactly the same way an existing archetype does and looks exactly like them, but worse, and then expect people to buy it? I don't know who this deck is for, aside from masochistic Yugi tubers. All in all, I mean, stay away. It's not worth your time trying to break them, and it's certainly not worth your money chasing short-printed secrets. So that's that. God, am I happy to finally be free of this one. If you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, I'm on twitch.tv/mbtygo every Monday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and if you have a certain idea for a deck or archetype you want me to take a look at on a future episode of this show, let me know in the comment section below and I'll do my best. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.